Hey everyone, it's Nick, and today I just wanted to make a fun video for the channel. So nothing directly related to the comic or the video game. Still SPR related though, as you'll see in a second. Last year, I taught computer science, and with my students I went over the future of computing and artificial intelligence. And AI is really important in today's world. It's going to become even more important as time goes on. We see it, with voice recognition, with Alexa, and we see it with self-driving cars. So lots of different branches of AI, one of which is image generation. So for those who don't know, one of the leading AIs for image generation is called Dall-E 2. And as of a few days ago, they released the beta, which I was, luckily accepted into. So I actually got access to use Dall-E 2, and in this video, I want to showcase sort of what it's capable of. I wanted to look at some of the limitations it has, and then most importantly, I wanted to attempt to generate each of the 12 main characters from Super Psychic Royale to see how well it would do. So let's check it out. Let's see how it did. Okay, so quick overview of the website. They have this prompt bar in the middle of the screen. You type a detailed description in, you include an art style, and then it generates 4 images in that style that fit the prompt that you provided. So an example here, an armchair in the shape of an avocado. This is their default image that they have a bunch of examples down here. I typed the same prompt in and I got these 4 different results. So in different ways, all of these fit the prompt. It is an armchair in the shape of an avocado, but obviously they all look a little bit different. The way the site works right now is that you have credits, and you can only generate a certain number of pieces of art for free. And then if you want, you can buy more credits, and it basically comes out to 13 cents for each group of 4. So every prompt you put in generates 4 images, and every prompt you enter roughly costs 13 cents if you want to pay for it. But let's check out some of the different interesting things that I sort of created when I was originally messing around with this. So this first one is a gecko sitting in a chair wearing a crown. This is cool because the AI figured out what it should look like for a gecko to actually sit down, whereas normally a gecko is only going to ever be on its belly, so this isn't a natural position for a gecko. This next one is brainstorm. Very simple prompt, but really cool art, and interpreted it in 2 different ways. Lightning striking the top of a head and a brain shooting out lightning through the clouds. This one is El Chupacabra in a moonlit desert. So this is a fictional creature, and it, there's some different ways that it interpreted what it should look like based on, everything that it's learned about chupacabras. This one is cats in Atlantis combat training. What I think is kind of interesting is that the bottom middle picture here gave the cats masks, and they're actually swimming underwater. And I didn't have anything about masks, so it sort of figured out that if cats are swimming, maybe they need masks to breathe or something. And then this last one here is a jackalope walking on a tightrope in space. A jackalope is also a fictional creature, so it's the combination of an antelope and a jackrabbit. And it didn't quite get it right, but it got pretty close. It's not quite a jackrabbit, but very similar. And then, some cool backgrounds generated behind all these images too. All right, so the next thing I wanted to try was how well Dall-E could recreate an existing character, given a fairly detailed description. And I decided to start with Pikachu. So I believe the prompt I used was a yellow mouse emitting electricity from its cheeks. I included that it had fairly long ears, and then I also wanted to put it in a forest, just to have some kind of background. And these were the results. So Pikachu doesn't actually look much like a real mouse, and I think Dall-E did a decent job of recreating what I asked for here. In this left picture, the mouse sort of looks spiky, but I think that might be the AI's interpretation of it emitting lightning. And then the image on the right here, I actually had done in a cartoon style, and even though it doesn't look like Pikachu, it matches my description really well, and I think it's in a very standard style that you would see in Pokemon, so I'm really impressed with the results. As a little bonus, here's what the AI came up with when I tried to describe Blastoise. After all the experimentation, I was finally ready to put Dall-E to the true test. Could it recreate the 12 characters from Super Psychic Royale? Or at least, could it get close? First up is Manang, an elderly Filipino woman with the ability to dissolve into a toxic purple smoke. I didn't include any kind of specific art style when I entered the prompt for Manang, and honestly, I'm not mad at it at all. We basically got to see sort of what she would look like as a live action character instead of a cartoon, and I really like all three of these. Next up we have Pius. So Pius is a level-headed businessman. He runs a shipping company, and his ability is that he can open portals. So he uses this, in combat situations with boxing, actually. So he does some long-distance boxing stuff, which is really cool. Pius was by far the most disappointing to create with Dall-E. Just ran into several problems. So the first issue was getting his clothing to match correctly. White and black dress shirt, red tie, khakis. Not super complicated, but Dall-E just could not seem to get it correct. I tried giving him hand wraps and MMA gloves, and the vast majority of the time, it didn't work at all. This is one of the few attempts where it did. But one of the biggest issues was actually just getting him to have a mustache. Just a mustache, no beard. In the cases where I was able to give the character a mustache, it was usually really oversized. In this case, it looks like it's drawn on. It doesn't actually look like a real mustache at all. And then there's the issue of ethnicity. Pius isn't black or Mexican. He's a combination of the two. And Dall-E had a very difficult time sort of finding that in between. It was usually very solidly one or the other. Dall-E also had a really hard time understanding what a portal was. In almost all of these images, you're going to notice that Pius is walking through a doorway. This is one of the few where I got something that looked somewhat like a portal in the background to actually appear. In the end, I probably generated 10 times as many images for Pius than I did for several of the other characters, and I still just wasn't as happy with the final result. So kind of a combination of things, I guess, but this was a clear case where Dall-E was not able to do a great job of recreating the character. Next is Loner, a kid with the ability to split into multiple copies of himself. Loner's outfit and appearance are fairly simple, so Dall-E didn't have any trouble creating someone that looked relatively similar to him immediately. Dall-E also did a great job creating multiple copies of him. However, if you look closely at some of these faces, they're kind of nightmare fuel. Human beings are really good at identifying human faces, and Dall-E's definitely not there yet. So it makes a good attempt. It has eyes and noses and mouths on all of these faces. However, it's just not quite right. Dall-E also sort of struggles with hands a lot of the time, so it'll add extra fingers, remove fingers, or sort of fuse fingers together. That's a pretty common thing I noticed. Next up is Sorbet, a girl with incredible strength and athleticism. It wouldn't be that difficult to create a girl that looks fairly similar to Sorbet, but I really wanted to focus on recreating her outfit and the giant hammer. Like Pius, her outfit ended up being way too complicated, and I really couldn't replicate it well. The giant hammer turned out all kinds of different ways in these renders, and none of them are really even remotely similar to her actual hammer. I ended up trying out the variations feature where you can upload an image and Dall-E will create new images based on it. Dall-E definitely understood what it was looking at. It recreated a person holding a hammer and gave her different types of clothing that were fairly similar, but I ultimately wasn't super impressed with any of these. After going back to the basic prompts, I was eventually able to get this image, which I was pretty happy with. And with Dall-E, you can actually iterate on a specific image and make small adjustments. And after a couple of different tries, I was eventually able to get this, which I was ultimately pretty happy with. Alright, next up we have Michelina. This is a girl who can control chairs with her mind. That's right, only chairs. So Michelina has this thing where she sort of will combine chairs together to create this sort of monster, and she'll control the monster. And I had some interesting results trying to recreate that. Definitely looked nothing like the chair monster she normally creates, but it was still kind of cool to see the different variations that the AI came up with. I ended up trying to just recreate Michelina in a scene with a bunch of chairs in the background, and these are the results. They're pretty simple, but they also have an artistic vibe to them, so I was pretty happy with this. Next up is Xian Shen, also known as Rigor. Xian is a martial arts master who can control the 4 elements, so he has a very specific outfit to complement his fighting style. I had fun experimenting with action scenes and different art styles with Rigor. He's got a simpler design overall, so I think it turned out pretty well. Then we have Tricia, an incredibly intelligent technopath with a cybernetic arm. Tricia seemed like a super basic character, and I didn't think I was going to have any difficulty recreating her, and I was completely wrong. For some reason, I just could not get the colors right on her outfit, and more importantly, I could not generate a robotic arm. So I went through a couple different iterations. I tried doing the variations thing again. I kind of just used that to create her in some different backgrounds, and that was kind of cool. Eventually, I came up with this, which was the best render. The arm definitely looks pretty different from her actual arm, and her outfit's a little different, but yeah, surprisingly difficult to do for Tricia. After Tricia, we have Choi, a kid from a primitive island who's always up for an adventure. Andre, the artist for Super Psychic Royale, actually just released a comic that goes into a bit of Choi's backstory. If you want to know more, check out the links in the description. You can go read that right now. It's available for free. But one thing that makes Choi interesting is that he actually has a pet raptor that he rides around. So for my attempt to recreate Choi, I really wanted to create him riding a raptor. Yikes. Now I don't know why, but Dall-E for some reason interpreted boy riding a raptor as boy riding a bicycle, and oh, by the way, for some reason there's a falcon in the picture. Now a raptor is a type of bike, and a raptor is also a classification for birds of prey, so both of these things make sense. But I was really surprised not to get an actual raptor in the majority of my pictures. I eventually got this image, which, I mean, this looks nothing like Choi, and it doesn't even really look like a raptor, but at least it looks sort of like a dinosaur. And in the end, I came up with this, which is fairly close. I mean, honestly, I'll take it. Bengis actually comes from the same island as Choi, and he has the ability to transform into an amalgamation of animals that he's killed. I knew Bengis was going to be too complicated to actually recreate, so I messed around with it a few times. This was the best I got. Really not that close. This image is a variation based on the original, and even though most of the main features are no longer present, I still think this looks kind of cool. We're down to the final 3 characters, and up next is Capablanca, a trained assassin with the ability to copy other Esper powers. Capablanca's defining features are her penchant for tea, her love of chess, her outfit, and her dual katanas. The outfit is too specific for Dall-E to perfectly replicate, so I really wanted to focus on the other 3 features here. Trying to combine all of these features at once was very difficult for Dall-E, but I was able to get this image. This was a great starting point, but to my surprise, when I tried to edit some specific features of this image, I got this message. Dall-E has restrictions involving violence, images of a sexual nature, politics, all kinds of other things. And apparently, even though this image was generated by Dall-E, it detected something that went against its own guidelines. So unfortunately, it actually would not allow me to edit this image any further. This is really unfortunate, and hopefully something that gets fixed in the future. Second to last is Bria, a girl with the ability to accelerate the growth of plants. Bria has a fairly simple outfit, and it wasn't too difficult to recreate. Due to the color of her hair, however, Dall-E kept interpreting her to be an elderly woman. I eventually got this image, and I think this might be my favorite overall from all of the different characters I tried to recreate. Really great looking image here. And last but not least is Johal, a man with the ability to manipulate gravity. I left Johal for the end because after doing all these different experiments, I realized this is the ideal character for Dall-E to recreate. His outfit is pretty straightforward, so Dall-E has probably seen tons of images that look fairly similar to what I was trying to replicate. And he's only performing one simple action, which is holding a dandelion. Dall-E didn't perfectly recreate the hair on his head and his facial hair, and his body type varies throughout these different images, but you can imagine that if you generated enough of these images, you would eventually get something very, very close to what he actually looks like. The place where Dall-E really shines is creating new images, and I mean, that's what it's meant for. But it was still fun to see these recreations, and I bet there are many other characters that Dall-E could recreate really well. Alright, well that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought about the images generated. I was personally super impressed, and I'm definitely going to continue using Dall-E 2 in the future. For those who aren't familiar with Super Psychic Royale, if you want to check it out, there's a bunch of links in the description to all the socials. And if you would be so kind, we actually entered the call to action contest on Webtoons. So we'd super appreciate it if you check that out. Read the comic, let us know what you think. Alright, but that's about it for this video, so I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.